And what is up, everybody? Okay, earlier today I was watching this absolutely awful, just awful. I want to call it an MMA movie, but it wasn't. It was called Tapped Out, and it was just awful. For those of you that have the Tubi app, it is a free and pretty decent alternative to Netflix. Especially for cartoon geeks like myself, it's got almost every Transformers cartoon. It's got it's got almost all the GI Joe cartoons, including Sigma Six and Renegade. Um, several other shows, animated movies that it has. But watching this movie called Tapped Out, Anderson Silva's in there, and another. The dude was on one of the seasons of Ultimate Fighter as a light heavyweight. He was the dude that Kevin James fought at the end of Here Comes the Boom. And therein kind of lies the problem. See, back when, like, what brought, what truly brought real martial arts into movies was Bruce Lee. They try to have phony versions of it in stuff like James Bond, my man Flynn, or whatever, and it just, it just was like you could tell it's just awful. And Bruce Lee bringing that in the form of Kato, and Green Hornet, and of course him bringing it in the form of Enter the Dragon. As far as to American cinema. Then you got all the exploitation films. You got Jim Kelly and Black Belt Jones. But then overseas, in Hong Kong, the first two black people to star in Hong Kong kung fu films was Ron Van Cleef and Carl Scott. I think that's his name. I'm not 100% sure. I keep forgetting his name. But the idea was that you had to be a proficient martial artist. You had to know the craft. When Karate Kid came out, it almost proved that as long as you could tell a good story, you don't necessarily need a good, real martial artist, especially when this was the first ever martial arts drama. Every other martial arts film was action. This was the first ever martial arts drama. The only other movie that fell under that franchise was the first that fell under that genre, other than the rest of the franchise, was the first Best of the Best movie. That was a true drama with guys like Eric Roberts and James Earl Jones. You better believe there's real drama. Then comes, the rest of the sequels, which were all action movies, and all of Chuck Norris's films, which were action movies, Jean-Claude Van Damme's movies, all action, all falls under action. What did these all have in common? You had great martial artists doing these absolutely awful movies and cannot act to save their lives. Some movies were pretty good, most of them weren't. Look no further than Firewater. And that movie had potential, and it was dumb, just absolutely dumb. What Everything to that genre started going down a horrible downward spiral within the United States, thanks to The Matrix. As groundbreaking as The Matrix was as far as special effects, it was through that fight choreography that proved to Hollywood you don't really need proficient martial artists. You don't need Billy Blanks. You don't need a Michael Jai White. You don't need Van Damme. You don't need Chuck Norris. If anything, you could probably do better if you hire if you hire actors that are not martial artists, train them how to fight, and then, look at both Charlie's Angels movies. Look at Kill Bill. Now, the only work martial artists could get any martial artist could get in a mainstream Hollywood movie is stunt work. Prime example of this, look no further than Scott Adkins. Scott Adkins, probably the best professional martial artist in the world right now. And, he's buff. The stuff that he does is absolutely amazing. It looks pretty realistic regardless, even though it's pretty flashy. It looks very effective. And, he was No Mouth Deadpool. He was the guy that gets his head chopped off in a propeller in Expendables 2. He was a guy who gets choked and his neck broken by the cloak of levitation in Doctor Strange. But there's a bunch of other movies that he actually starred in. And he's actually a pretty decent actor, too. Unfortunately, it falls under the whole martial arts action movie genre. And all these different martial art films coming out, they don't come out in theaters. They go straight to Redbox. They go straight to Netflix or to Tubi or any other streaming service you may have. And now all these absolutely awful independent movies where these guys cannot tell a story. The story sucks. The acting sucks. Fight choreography is actually pretty decent, but because the cinematography sucks, these movies go absolutely nowhere. And Tap Out tried doing it. This other guy tried doing it, and it's a shame that you don't see that. And the way martial art movies were done back in the 80s and early 90s. You don't see that anymore. You can't see that anymore because now, since Hollywood isn't looking for true martial artists to make us to turn into stars, you got these martial artists trying to promote themselves. Prime example of this is a friend of mine. He's been in five different independent films, full length feature films, 5 different full length feature films, all of them independent. I went to see one of them. It sucked. It was absolutely awful. But the entire movie was about the star, who also wrote and directed the movie, to basically put himself on screen, despite the fact that my friend was the best stuntman he had. And all the fight scenes that my friend was in, where he really got to show off what he was capable of, he was wearing a mask, so you couldn't even see what he looked like. And then the one time that you could see what he looks like, he gets taken down within half a second. Taken down and done away with in half a second. It was just awful. And then that wasn't even like, and then that was the last part my friend had, and it wasn't even halfway through the movie. But this guy is basically just full of himself, pushing himself out there, and that's what a lot of these martial art movies are. It's horrible. It's horrible that that's what it's come to. That's not. I want to say that's not the case with Scott Adkins. That's definitely the case with Michael Jai White. I mean, that was the whole purpose of Blood and Bone, and Blood and Bone is a tribute film. Blood and Bone, for somebody like me, that was a tribute film. It was the tribute to both the old and, kind of like a passing of the guard, old and the new. You had, Ernest the Cat Miller, but then you also had Maurice Smith. You had Bob Sapp. You had Gina Carano, but you also had Gene LaBelle and Bob Wall. And I think Fumio Demura was in it as well. It was the tribute to both old and new. And especially going up against I forget his name. Known his name for so many years. It's ridiculous. So now what happens is with stupid movies like Falcon Rising. As great a martial artist as Lateef Crowder is, you got to pay back. He's playing back fiddle to Michael Jai White. Or look at Tekken. That movie was awful. I'm pretty sure the kid who was Jin Kazama wasn't a martial artist, and I don't think the dude who played Kazuya is a martial artist. Then you got another prime example of you don't need martial arts for the movies. King of Fighters. This is awful. It's absolutely awful. I saw that movie and started calling my friends up and sending I found a pirated copy of it online, and I sent the link to all my friends and told them they better watch it. They need to watch it. They have to watch it so they could be just as pissed off as I was. That's how bad that movie was. Then look at Daredevil. Granted, Charlie Cox is like Charlie Cox. He could do the fight choreography pretty well, versus in Iron Fist. Dude who's playing Iron Fist as Finn Jones. I know personally that man cannot punch his way out of a wet paper bag. So, different things like that. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, they only use real martial artists. They only use guys who've, dedicated their lives to telling a story through fight choreography. Same thing in Japan. If you've seen 13 Assassins, if you've seen, just hell, name any movie. Now granted, Keanu Reeves, after his introduction to the martial arts through The Matrix, he truly is a martial artist now. That's why he did 47 Ronin. That's why he directed Man of Tai Chi, which was a very, very good movie, surprisingly. 47 Ronin, of course, was garbage, though. And then you got a guy like Scott Adkins, who I said, in my opinion, probably the best a professional martial artist in the world. And well, I should at least say in Hollywood, because when you got guys like Donnie Yen, who's like anything and everything he does is just magic. Um, but Donnie Yen's not Hollywood. He's he's all Hong Kong. Best professional martial artist in Hollywood, Scott Adkins, and the only starring roles he gets, mind you, I'm pretty sure he's not the one footing the bill. He's not the one pushing himself. The only starring roles he gets is videos that go straight to DVDs. They go movies that go straight to DVD, straight to Redbox, straight to Netflix, straight to Tubi, straight to Popcorn Flicks, like all these other different streaming services. That's where they get that's where he gets his check from. It sucks. That a guy with that much talent, and like I said, he's actually he's a decent enough actor. You never see him get a starring role. It's sad. And then the fact that I'm about to go to the Urban Action Showcase. It's November 10th, which is the Marine Corps birthday. And ironically, Rod Van Cleef, who's also a Marine, is there. And he's gonna be there. I know that for a fact because he's there every year. This is a film festival. It used to celebrate positive black heroes in cinema, in action cinema. Positive black protagonists, basically the anti-exploitation. Now it's all about diversity. I don't know where that's I don't know like where they're going with that, but whatever. You're gonna have a bunch of different you're gonna have a bunch of different filmmakers, a bunch of different martial artists, all trying to push their film, their projects, them as actors, them as starring roles, and individually they all suffer. Versus an idea that I have, which not that I don't know how to do it, but it's the fact that I don't have the means to do it, while these people do. There was a film that came out in 2007 called Underground. It's a British film, and for a movie with no plot, it was very, very good. For a movie with no plot and almost no character development, it still told a pretty good story. And it requires people who are truly committed. It requires everybody putting their any petty differences that they may have aside, and everybody coming together in a joint effort to pull off, rather than everybody do their own individual little projects. Everybody come together for one big project that even if we manage to make it to Redbox, we manage to make it to as a Redbox rental, that's a step up from where these guys are now. It's these guys, their films, they could be full-length features, and their films aren't even available outside of their suitcase and their table that they're pushing to sell the DVDs of the short films that they made. If everybody was to come together to do this one film, Underground, just remake it, Americanize it, and actually be able to put it out there. Get it on Netflix, get it on Tubi, get it on Popcorn Flicks, get it into a Redbox machine. Even if we're not selling out theaters or a top 10 movie, for whatever weekend it is, that's a hell of a lot better than what I see a majority of these guys doing. Traveling around for a year or two, trying to push the same independent film, same full-length feature film, because they, whatever, they blew all their money on that one film and they got nothing else. Because they try to do it, and they try to do everything themselves instead of trying to find like-minded, instead of try to truly find like-minded people that wanted everybody to succeed. And until that happens, we're gonna see basically the death of martial arts in cinema. It's absolutely sad because this, like I said, Bruce Lee broke the barrier for that, and he made opportunities for martial artists who weren't competing anymore, and even when they did compete, they weren't making any money. An opportunity to make money, an opportunity to put themselves out there, and the more and more stories that evolved from those movies eventually inspired video games, inspired mixed martial arts, and ultimately inspired The Matrix and all these other action films that borrow a lot from that. And even as like I want to say the last true martial art drama that was done was Warrior, but it was an MMA movie, and so a lot of people wouldn't necessarily count that as a traditional martial arts movie. And I would love to see more stuff like that. But again, just like with Karate Kid, neither one neither one of these guys, Joel Edgerton and Tom Hardy, were not martial artists. They weren't even mixed martial artists. They had to learn how to fight just for that movie. They did a pretty good job faking it, but still, this goes to where this contributes out to the Matrix, proving you don't need you don't need actual martial artists to be able to tell a good story. And it's a shame that it's come to that. I hope that more and more filmmakers come together to really try to, rather than try to put their own name out there, maybe in a joint effort, get everybody recognized. And until that happens, martial arts movies are just going to continue to die. I'm done talking. You guys have a good night.